Hello and welcome to COP 4708. In this session, we are going to learn how to use Visio to create a database design. Let's open Microsoft Visio, and you can click on the database model diagram, and that will show here, and then create, which will open a new diagram page with the objects of the database entities and relationships. To begin, we are going to select the entity or the table that we are going to create at the beginning and drop it here. You can actually zoom in just to see the creation. Can make it around 80, and it says table 1, and you have the properties sheet down here, so you can actually fill the information in the properties sheet. The first one, the first table, we are going to call order item table, and you can write it like this, or you can write it all caps. Then you select columns, which is the second one in the properties sheet, and start adding the different columns. For example, we need an order ID, and that will be required. We need the SKU number, and that will be required, and we can consider it as a primary key for the item, and that will be the ID, or how we can identify the different items. And we have the quantity, which is also required, and the price, that's also required, and the extended price. And in this case, it will be calculated, so I don't have to worry about being required or not, because I will build calculation behind that, which will be quantity times the price, and that will give me the extended price. But let's look at the data types. As you can see here, the default was a character with the size 10. We can change that by just clicking on that and select the proper data type. In this case, we are going to select integer for the order ID. We are going to select also integer for the SKU, unless we have stock keeping unit that has letters. In this case, we're gonna change it, but most of the stock keeping units are in numbers, so that's why I made it integer. And then we have the quantity. It will be integers, since we are not using a breakable item. Breakable items means items that can be sold by 3.5, 4.5, or something like that. Instead, it's integer and only whole number. For the price and extended price, its currency is not a character, so we can actually change it to currency. So I selected the data types we added the names for the columns, we selected the null not null or required not required, and we selected the primary key for the table. So that's table number 1 being created in the design stage. Now we can create another table, and to do that, all what we need to do is just to drag another one and drop it beside the first one. And then we'll go to definition and select the name for the second table. In this case, it will be retail order. Again, we go to columns and start adding the different columns for that column or that table. Order ID, and that will be the primary key. Now notice that we used this column before in the previous table. So what's the idea? The idea is to be a primary key in this table, and it will be a foreign key in the other table, and that will be the link or the connection column between the two tables. Now we can start actually changing the type as we create the column. Store number, and that will be also integer. And will be required. Store zip code, and that will be character, but we are going to make it length. I'm going to change the length to 9 just to show you that those characters actually, the size for the character can change with the length that you want. We have order month, and again I'll change the character size to read 12. The zip code will be required, the month will be required. I will make the year as not required and make it as integer. And we have the order total, and that is currency. And that's required. So we have the required columns, the primary key, we have the data type, and we have the different columns being added. If you select the primary ID, you can see that the primary ID being selected already. If was not selected, all what you need to do is to highlight and add, and that will be a primary ID. In this case, like I said, we already selected the primary key when we were creating the columns. So already been done. So we defined the table, added the columns, and defined or identified the primary key for that table. And that will be the second table. Now to create a relationship, we have the relationship here. We can just drag it and drop it, and then just we identify the link. As you can see here, it did use the order ID as my link. It did use the order ID as my link between the two tables. If you click on that relation, you can see the name of the relation. You can select if you need it to be identifying or non-identifying. If you want the cardinality to be 1 or more, or 0 or more, or 0 or 1, or exactly 1. So you can select the type of relation that you would like to build here. Again, if this is not showing here, since you created the relation but it's not showing, what can be done in this case is just select the text and say that it is one or many to many relationship. And now it's documented here that it's many to many relationship. So we have the first table, we have the second table, we have a relation, and we have the many to many relationship. To make the mandatory or optional, we can actually, instead of using this, you can just add a shape of a circle or lines as needed. So you don't have to worry about this one. Just add a circle or add the lines to make it mandatory or make it optional. If you have any questions about how to create the design, please let me know, and I will be more than glad to help. Thank you.